Hello and welcome to episode 3 of my creative diary. In this series of videos, I share all of the different creative things that I've been doing over the previous couple of weeks. So we are now in late April and everything has changed in the landscape outside of my studio. This is the view from my studio window and everything just suddenly seems green. It seems so much more colourful than even a few weeks ago. And the longer days and the longer hours of light are really bringing with them so much inspiration for me. So we're going to start this diary by having a look at what's been happening in my future craft room. I have been painting this table, and you may remember this from my previous episode where I just started painting the top of it. Well, in the end, it took about 4 or 5 coats. I distressed the top, but then I knew that I wanted to decoratively paint it too. So I got my acrylic paints. I decided that I was going to do a design on the dark wood section of the table. I did wonder for a while whether I'd do something on the tabletop, but as that's going to be covered in probably a lot of craft supplies, my antique boxes and so on, I decided that I would do the design on the side of the table. So I did a simple pattern along the front there. The middle panel, it just needed something, and that something was a moth. So I went back and forth with so many ideas as to what to do to this table, what to paint on it. I went through several things like a flying bird, leaves, perhaps a folky kind of flower, but in the end, the moth one, it just adds that lovely whimsical touch. It's so unusual, and I now have a table that feels really unique. So I'm so pleased with how this turned out. It took me many hours of work actually to do this, but I think it's going to be a great addition to my craft room. This footage isn't the clearest because I had to use my iPhone and I zoomed in from the bathroom window when I looked out one day and saw all of the deer grazing in our garden. So these are deer that have escaped from a local manor house. They have a deer park with hundreds of deer. And I kind of feel like they've come to our garden and it's a place of safety for them. But over the years, their numbers have steadily been growing and we have quite a herd now. So with this in mind, the other week we decided that we were going to have a Zoom drawing session with my Patreon members, and we would draw from photos of the deer in our garden. So my partner Dominic takes amazing photos of the deer. And so we worked, I think it was from 6 of those images, and it was really fun. It was surprisingly enjoyable to paint them. I was a little bit worried about doing this because they're such beautiful creatures, and I don't tend to paint animals. I paint birds, but I don't tend to paint animals all that often. So it was a really interesting challenge. It was a lovely session with some of my Patreon members, and I actually discovered how much I enjoy sketching animals. So I think that I might be doing this more often from now on. Dominic joined us in that session as well, and the replay video is now up on Patreon. So if you become a member, you will get to see that and perhaps draw along with us. Something I've been doing over the past week or two is to sort through my craft stash, and I'm gradually getting my supplies in some kind of order at long last. I thought I would do this ahead of actually putting them in the craft room so that when it comes to the time of actually putting the furniture in the craft room and getting everything set up, I will actually have things in some kind of order, so I'm not having to do it then. I can just pop them in there and hopefully everything will have its place. So I actually bought these wooden clothes pegs. I saw somebody else doing this, like winding embroidery thread around wooden clothes pegs, and I thought, what a fantastic idea. So I managed to get 40 of them from Amazon for, I think it was just over £7, which seemed quite a good deal. They make such a lovely aesthetic looking bobbin. So I've gradually been winding my different wools and my different threads onto them. I also have these antique bobbins, which I got from Jessie Chorley's website, and they're fantastic for like smaller quantities of threads or finer threads. I just want to give this craft room a really lovely, warm, quite vintage feel. So I'm putting the time and effort into doing all of this because for me, my surroundings are very important. And there's something lovely about having items that are not only useful, but are also beautiful at the same time. I just know that this little pot of embroidery threads is going to make me smile every time I see it and every time I use it. I thought I'd give you a quick knitting update. I don't have that much to report, other than I did make a start on the pattern that I wanted to work on, which is the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit. So I've been working on a couple of Sophies in different yarns and on different needles, and just kind of seeing how I get on with it. I'm doing pretty well. I can do the I-cord edge. My knitting, I think, is fairly neat, and I'm not dropping stitches, but I do sometimes get carried away and forget when I'm on an increased row, even though I'm using a row counter. When I go wrong, the problem I'm having is that I can't just unravel to the point where I went wrong and get it back on the needles. I've tried so many different ways, so many different times, and I've ended up, whenever I've made a mistake, having to unravel the entire thing. So this is a sticking point at the moment. I'm hoping it will get better, and I'm hoping that I'll have a more positive update for you in the next creative diary. Something I've been doing over the past few weeks is also organising my art supplies. So I have these fabric buckets, and they've been storing my acrylic gouache for a while now, but I've always been worried about getting paint on them because they were quite expensive. So I have decided that I'm going to use them in the craft room instead, and I'm going to transfer my acrylic gouache collection into a beautiful green enamel bin that I bought from Malsford Mill Antiques when I was in Suffolk. I think this was about a year ago now, so I've had this for a while, just been sitting in the studio waiting to be used, and I thought it would be perfect for these. So I gave it a wash the other day and left it to dry outside in the sunshine because I was a little bit concerned about it going rusty. So I put it out there. And at first I thought I would put all of the flash paints in there and then the acrylic gouache on top. Well, that wasn't going to work because the flash paints took up so much space. And when I tipped out the little fabric bucket of acrylic gouache, this is what it looked like. I counted and there were over 80 tubes of paint. So I thought, this will never do. I'm going to have to try something different. So I took the flash paint out, and I actually found that the acrylic gouache on its own just fitted in there perfectly. I actually went through every single one of these tubes and made sure that the paint hadn't dried up because I haven't used it for a while. but it made me so excited to use it again. That was the crazy thing. While I was doing this, it was almost like I had new art supplies again. You know that buzz you get when you have new art supplies? I found this to be really interesting. The fact that just sorting out the paints, looking at them again, just made me really appreciate them. And now I'm excited to use these again for the first time in maybe a couple of years. I needed another container for the flash paints, so I looked in the studio and I found this one. This is a metal container from IKEA, and I think I used to store pens in it or something like that, but it wasn't currently being used, and fortunately it was just about big enough to fit the flash paints in. So that's now gone in my art cart, and I feel like they're organised. I now know what I've got. And I'm including this because this is something somebody asked me in a comment the other day. They asked how I store my swatches. Well, I store them in a smaller version of that metal container. So again, came from IKEA. They're relatively cheap, but I love the green colour. And this one just so happens to fit exactly the swatch cards that I like to use. So yeah, I store them all in there. They're not in any particular colour order or anything like that. I think the newest collection that I put together for Deep Light Watercolours, that's kind of at the front. So that's how I store them. And I thought you might like to see this as well. This is a vintage cigar box. Now, I got this from eBay probably about a year or two ago, something like that. And I've been using it to store my Holbein gouache paints. So I have a bigger collection of Holbein gouache than any other brand. So I like to keep those all together, and they fit nicely just in this box. And yeah, I just think it's a really, I don't know, slightly different, interesting way of storing them. I thought it might be good for travel as well, and I could use the lid as a palette, like the inside of the lid. I would have to have some kind of tie around it or elastic around it to hold it together, but it could be a good little travel palette. So I really like that. I like finding creative ways of storing things. Another thing I did the other day was to renew our National Trust membership for another year. So we had been without it for a couple of months, and I'd actually really missed having it. It's lovely to know that you can just go wherever you like. If you have like an afternoon, a couple of hours, or if you want a bigger day out, you know that you can just go and you don't have to pay to get into any of these amazing places. I think if you go to National Trust places several times a year, it's definitely worth having the annual membership. So I'm pleased to have that again. And the other day, we just had a few hours in the afternoon. So we went to our local National Trust, which is Polesden Lacey. It's a lovely house and garden. And we had a wander around there. So I'm going to leave you for a few minutes just to have a little look around. And hopefully you will find this as relaxing and inspiring as I did. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of My Creative Diary. If you did, please leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, like the video, maybe even hype the video if you're able to do that. All of this will help it to be seen by a wider audience, which would be brilliant. And I'd like to thank my Patreon members and my YouTube channel members for their extra support each month. I will wish you all a very creative couple of weeks, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.